He was only 13 years old when Hollywood came knocking. By 14, he was a household name, and by 16, he was living with a 29-year-old woman who held every lever of control in his life. By 20, he was in a full-blown self-medicated crisis. This is the story of Edward Furlong. But more than that, it's a story about what the system does to children, and the example it's setting in society. What happens when the lines between love, power, and abuse are intentionally blurred, when silence is the norm and survival is a miracle. This isn't your average comeback story or a scandal recap. This is an investigation of what happens when fame hits before your brain finishes developing, and how children scooped up from broken homes can be made famous overnight to only then be thrust into a very adult world, without any protection or guidance. Edward Walter Furlong was born on August 2nd, 1977, in Glendale, California. His father Heinrich, whom he'd never met, passed when he was only 2 years old, and his mother Eleanor was a youth center worker who struggled to provide after divorcing Eddie's stepfather, Moses Torres. The entire scope of the situation is unclear, with some media sources giving slightly different accounts, but 12-year-old Edward was sent to live with Eleanor's sister Nancy and half-brother Sean Furlong, who at the time were 31 and 21 respectively, while his younger brother Robert stayed with their mother. Edward had zero interest in acting or performing, was not actively seeking an agent or attending any auditions, but he did have a strong fascination with movies. He loved sci-fi, action, and horror movies, so when the opportunity for Terminator 2 arose, it was a dream he'd never even considered come true.
Half Mexican, part Russian, but on the big screen he's all American. Second only to Macaulay Culkin as Hollywood's favorite screen kid. He recently passed his driving test live on American network TV. And at the age of 14, Eddie Furlong went from street kid to screen hero, literally overnight, after being plucked from the streets of Pasadena to play alongside Arnie in Terminator 2. I met up with Eddie on Santa Monica Beach, where we walked and talked about how he became an instant teen Hollywood heartthrob. When did you first decide you wanted to be an actor?
I didn't really decide. I just got discovered for Terminator 2.
It was in September of 1990, at around 13 years of age, while hanging out at the Pasadena Boys and Girls Club, that casting director Molly Finn cruised by looking for fresh faces with raw talent. Eddie was standoffish, being the new kid, and had a tough-skin attitude that for whatever reason Molly felt was a perfect fit for the part, believing he could hold his own performing alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton. If you weren't aware, the role I'm referring to is of the young John Connor, who the Terminator is sent back to 1995 to protect, as he's meant to lead the resistance against Skynet in 2029.
I was hanging at this place called the Pasadena Boys Club, and this casting director just came up to me and asked if I wanted to try out for T2, and so I went in for interviews after interviews after interviews, and finally got the part.
And why do you think you got the part over all the other people?
Because I was better.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la vista, baby.
I remember that Jim said to me very early on, John Connor is an extremely important role, and I have got to have a young actor who is a professional who will hit his marks. I cannot be working with a new kid. I can't do it. And one of the problems is that this is supposed to be a streetwise kid, and a kid who was a bit tough, and we saw all of these professional kids who couldn't have any toughness, and when they tried to act angry or tough, it just looked ridiculous. It didn't look real, it didn't look believable.
What I was looking for is a combination of a kind of a strength of character that wasn't necessarily a physical strength. I didn't want him to be just some little jock kid that looked like he could handle anything. He had to have a quality that needed protecting.
This was in the summertime, and one thing that I ended up doing was going to camps, motocross races, and then we decided we would start looking, in addition to theaters, at some kinds of organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs. And it was at that point that We contacted the boys club in Pasadena. And then I started walking around, and there was a kid leaning up against the wall by the pool.
This woman started staring at me, and I thought she was so weird because she just stared at me and smiled at me, and I'm just like, yeah.
And I walked over to him, and he was snarling. And I said, "You want to audition for a movie?"
A couple days later, we get a call. "Remember that woman you talked to in the Pasadena Boys Club?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then she's, "Well, that's the casting director for Terminator 2. They want you to go up for the part of John Connor." And I'm just like, "Yeah!" I went in for my first interview, and then I get a call later, and Mally Finn says, "I want you to come out and try out with Linda Hamilton." So I went and tried out for it again and got really bashful and kind of shy, and I didn't do so well. And I almost got written off the list.
It was exactly what Jim was afraid of, that he couldn't repeat things right away. It was terribly difficult. He was very nervous.
Mally kept fighting for me, and she said, "Just give him one more chance." And I got an acting coach.
We found this wonderful man, Mike Muscat, who came in and worked with Eddie for a while, and we brought him back. He came in and did the scenes again.
I went in for my final interview, and I was really nervous. I looked around, and Jim's just like, I could just see the look on people's faces. And then I just kind of just brightened up and did the part, and Jim lifted his head from his hands, and I left. And then right when I was getting in the car, Jim came out, and he said, "You have the part."
While filming, his mother sought to regain custody and control of his budding career and finances, where Nancy and Sean had positioned themselves as his managers. Both parties argued that the other had more interest in the money than the best interest of Eddie, who was experiencing an entirely new world, surrounded by strangers. With no one even asking production how he was doing, if there were any issues, no actual involvement whatsoever. The film was released in the summer of 1991, and Eddie was immediately recognized as a teen idol of the era.
You were playing baseball one day when this whole kind of adventure started. Now, what happened during that game that started all this?
Actually, I wasn't playing baseball. I was. A lot of people said I was, but I was at the boys club, and the boys club is like a place where there's a lot of video games and places to hang out for kids. And there's a casting director, her name was Mally Finn, and she came over and she said, "Can I talk to you?" And I go, I'm sorry, I don't know. What did I do? And she goes, "I would like you to try out for Terminator 2. Well, with my weird memory, she writes down my name, my address, and everything. And I'm on the way home with my aunt and uncle, Sean and Nancy. And I said, "Guess what? I'm gonna try out for a movie." They go, "What movie?" Nightmare on Elm Street 6, I think. Then, she gets a call from the casting director, and the casting director says, Nancy gets a call, "I would like Eddie to try out for Terminator 2. And then she's like thinking, "Terminator 2? Oh, okay, that's great." She hangs up the phone, calls me, "Eddie, are you ready?" And I go, "Ready for what?" "You're gonna try it for Terminator 2. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, Terminator, and all that. And I go on the first interview, and I worked with the casting director and everything, and that went pretty well. I got on the finalist, and the second one was with Linda Hamilton and James Cameron, so that didn't go too well because I was a little nervous about meeting them. And then the third interview was after they gave me a chance to work with a dialogue coach for 4 hours a day, so I finally went on my third interview. And Jim told me he was going to tell me Friday, except he came out and he said, "I would like you to do this movie." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And I get in the car and I'm like, "Yeah," and that's the story.
What was when you first met Arnold? When I met him for the first time, I was a little bit kind of psyched out. How did you prepare for that, and how did that meeting go?
I was getting prepared, but I didn't do a good job because I shook his hand, but I went like this, and Arnold's standing there like this, and I go, "What?" And he goes, "Shake it harder." And I go, "Okay." I shake it really hard, So later in the movie, I've been shaking hands with him.
What was the most impressive scene for you when you're watching it being filmed? Was there ever like a scene that you were scared, or you just kind of sat back and go, whoa, this is really impressive?
There's a scene in the movie when the truck goes over the bridge of a bridge, and the canal chase scene. And that was the one that I thought was the most spectacular stunt I have ever seen, because I saw that in real life. I was there on the set watching it.
His fame and notoriety further increased when he was given an MTV Movie Award for Best Breakthrough Role and a Saturn Award for Best Performance by Younger Actor. While the custody battle continued to broil in the background, Eddie was appearing in other moderately successful films, such as Pet Sematary 2 and American Heart, both released in 1992.
What was it like working with Arnie?
Yeah, it was fun. Arnold's a great guy, and he's real nice, and he has a good sense of humor, and we had a lot of fun shooting that.
Schwarzenegger says the opportunity to play a good Terminator provided a nice surprise.
I loved the idea of showing a different Terminator, a Terminator that had additional dimensions to it than the first one, because the first one I played very straightforward and like a machine. Mm-hmm. But this time, the Terminator is enough time with human beings that he adds a lot of human characteristics that are quite appealing in a movie.
All right, my man.
No problemo.
The relationship between Arnold and the 10-year-old boy, played by newcomer Edward Furlong, who was literally plucked from a Pasadena playground for this part, is the key to the humanity in the film.
All right.
But those Terminator fans who are looking for excitement as well as drama will not be disappointed.
Stay down.
Despite T2 grossing over $200 million, Eddie's fee was only $30,000. The downside of fame, however, was only around the corner as Eddie became embroiled in a custodial battle between his mother and his aunt. Eddie left home when he was just 13 to live with his aunt. His mum, Eleanor, sued for control of her movie star son, who she now sees every weekend.
All of a sudden, my whole personal life, my life is just out in the public, and it was kind of a weird experience.
Do you like the fame that's associated with, the acting, or would you rather just be straight acting? And
I like the fame. It makes me feel good. It makes me, makes me feel like, I'm worthwhile to watch.
And he certainly was worth watching in Terminator 2, but his career was nearly terminated by his next role in Pet Sematary 2. Now he's turned his back on sequels to co-star alongside Jeff Bridges in the critically acclaimed American Heart. A gritty look at the life on the streets of Seattle.
Have you been pedaling your ass?
Well, it's about this kid named Nick who just ran away from this farm he lived on because his father's getting out of prison. And it's about the relationship living on the streets and how it develops.
If I ever catch you with your fingers where they don't belong,
Yeah?
I'll string you up by your short hairs.
What are you worried about me for?
But there are no worries about Eddie's future. He co-stars with that old misery Kathy Bates in A Home of Our Own, due out next year.
That same year, while filming A Home of Our Own as Kathy Bates' oldest son, 15-year-old Eddie was falling victim to the only adult taking a special interest in him personally.
We have nothing of our own. Everything we did have, we either sold it or left it behind. We have nothing. It's supposed to be Christmas, goddammit! It's Christmas!
Watch your mouth, Shane Patrick Lacey.
Jacqueline DeMack had formerly served as Eddie's stand-in for T2, and had later become his on-set tutor. Director Tony Bill had already long since suspected the then 26-year-old Jackie had a romantic interest in Eddie. She was the on-set tutor for the 6 child actors, and one day she was caught playfully wrestling with Eddie and another child on the classroom floor, and was fired. Tony had made Sean and Nancy aware of the situation, but they didn't believe there was anything inappropriate going on, and Domack became Eddie's tutor exclusively, traveling with him between the various sets and events, while his family continued to fight over who gets to benefit from him financially. Tony had even gone one step further, and made contact with Eddie's court-appointed lawyer, whom he had retained throughout the custodial proceedings, Bruce Ross. Reluctantly, as he didn't think Sean or Nancy had the experience or wherewithal to manage his career, but Eddie insisted. Bruce wrote up a suitable management contract to protect Eddie's money and best interest, but if anything, this was only pushing him further into the arms of the woman who'd been grooming him since he was a preteen. Sometime between 1993 and 1994, when Eddie was only 16, Jackie had moved him into her home, and the pair were living as what she described as quasi-spousal.
And making sure he avoids the Hollywood pitfalls that afflicted Drew Barrymore and the late River Phoenix is 29-year-old Jacqueline Domack. They met on the set of Terminator 2, on which she was his stand-in and personal tutor, and she's been giving him lessons in love ever since.
So who's your perfect woman?
My girlfriend, Jackie. I like, she's the most beautiful woman in the whole wide world, and she's the most perfect woman in the whole wide world, and she has the most perfect personality, and she keeps me down to earth. I always tell her that, it's like weird because it's like nature didn't create her. It's like she makes me believe in a god because she, she's just so perfect. It's weird.
Are you in love?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
Around this time, the statutory laws in California had changed to include female perpetrators, and his uncle Sean filed a report with police. They did interview Eddie, and although Jackie was in direct and blatant violation of these laws, they ultimately chose not to lay any charges. On the set of Brain Scan, which was released in 1994, Jackie and his family had one final blowout, when it became apparent Edward was seeking an emancipation, and none of them would have any control over his career or finances.
I'm sorry, sir, there's no such number listed.
That's impossible!
I'm sorry, sir.
You have a call, Master.
Hello, Michael.
Fucker! Who are you? What did you do?
If I were you, I would address that question to myself.
Okay, who killed that man? And what's happened?
You were there, Michael. You know exactly what you did.
His estate was put into an attorney-controlled trust, and he obtained the legal powers of an adult. By the time they landed on the set of Little Odessa, also released in 1994, he had begun introducing Jackie as his girlfriend. She was 29, and he was barely 17.
Jackie's in love with me. It's so what? If I were, normal 16-year-old Joe Blow, it'd be a totally different story. Nobody would care.
What do you say to your aunt's concerns?
Well, those are my aunt's concerns, No, there's no truth. There's no truth to those concerns. I think probably their main problem is because our relationship's not working out too well anymore. I don't know why they're talking to the press. All I can say is that if they really cared, they wouldn't. And they wouldn't spread lies.
Furlong then addressed the issue that his live-in love is almost twice his age.
I'm not saying I don't have a relationship with somebody, but, who the hell's business is that? It's like, I have a girlfriend named Jackie, so what? She's, older than me, so what? That happens all the time. Like I said, if it was a normal 16-year-old, who would care?
Eddie Furlong didn't choose stardom. Stardom chose Eddie Furlong. And now his aunt fears that without guidance and supervision, the teenager might end up like so many other child stars who were used and abused by Hollywood and then discarded.
I've heard rumors about Eddie being out there drunk. People seeing him in clubs drunk and smoking. This isn't the kid I knew 8 months ago.
Not into drugs. I'm not into, I'm just doing my job and I'm trying to have a life.
Tafoya says when she and her brother, Sean Furlong, took over guardianship from Eddie's mother in 1990 due to the mother's personal problems, Eddie was a sweet and loving kid. But Tafoya says when Eddie started filming his latest sci-fi thriller, Brain Scan, he knew his aunt and uncle didn't approve of his relationship with Jackie and severed the ties.
This older woman should not be, inserting herself into his life and taking control.
Celebrity columnist Richard Johnson has spent a career covering Hollywood, and he says Furlong's relationship with this older woman is hurting his star status.
It's a situation where he's the only major star in the movie,
And he can't do any press because he doesn't want to talk about his relationship with Jackie Domak, so no publicity is being done. And you're the producer of this movie, you've spent millions and millions of dollars, and this is really annoying because you're afraid that the movie's going to open, no one's going to know about it, and it's going to bomb.
If you want your own private life, that's your own business, because when you're filming a movie, that's work. When you're at home, you're resting. It's not work.
It's not going to last. It's not. He's 16 years old. She's 30 years old. You know, she's lived twice his lifetime of experiences that he should be having right now. And he's not going to have those experiences at all.
But Eddie says he has big plans for the future.
Plans to stay together, plans to get married.
Sure. You know, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's all it is just a loving relationship. That's all it is. You know, I'm sure you have one. I'm sure, you know, everybody, you know, I mean, most people have, you know, a relationship, but, you know, it just so happens that because I was in Terminator 2 with Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, people have to sensationalize on it. And that's the kind of thing that irks me, is because, you know, I just want to have my life, you know.
We tried to interview Jackie Domak, but she refused. And many are now wondering what's next for the kid next door who made it big time.
I hope he will come around, but he's being actually right now raised with the morals of Hollywood. He's like my own. In the future, no matter what you do, I'm always here for you. And I love you.
By 1998, he had gained even more critical acclaim for his performances in American History X and Pecker, but his role in Detroit Rock City, which was released in 1999, was the biggest turning point in his life.
Civil Simon, they're the one and only. Hey, you kids are gonna have to hurry this up, all right? I'm due at Cobo Hall in a half hour for the warm-up.
We're right behind you, Simon. We just want to thank you in advance for handing over those burly-ass ticks me and my buds won this morning.
Your name isn't Trip, is it?
Oh, no, my name's Trip. Remember, we were talking on the phone?
Now 21, likely longing for more independence and control over his own life and career, he both fired Jackie as his manager and separated from her. This was also in part due to the newfound friendship and soon-to-be romance with co-star Natasha Lyonne, who was not only more age-appropriate, but the two had a lot more in common. Unfortunately, this included their drug use to silence the internal noise.
Are
you all right?
Sure, man. I mean, I guess it's totally
Okay, yeah,
sure.
No, you do. I don't want to. If you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sorry. You sure?
Yeah.
Wow. Damn.
I love you in Slums of Beverly Hills.
Thank you so much.
You were great. Do you know there's like 60 films in Belgium right now that deal with teen themes and teen issues and all that. And teens are like the hottest hooks in Hollywood right now. I was just wondering how it feels to be there, because you are one of those hot people.
Hot teens?
Yeah.
I'm 20. I don't know what you're talking about. How does it feel to be a hot teen? Feels hot. Hot. On fire. It's good. Youth is good. I'm glad that there's a concentration on that demographic because, you know, it's relevant. What teenagers are thinking are going to be the people that rule the world in the next couple of years, so it's important that we know where their heads are at now.
How do you think teens are unique to know?
Well, I think that they're, you know, with the whole computer situation, they're a lot more probably involved and they have a lot, you know, more access to information as soon as they have a question and that sort of thing. So I just think that they're probably a lot more kind of educated on what they want to educate themselves on. They're probably a lot more sort of self-taught on whatever their interest is.
That's great. Thank you very much. Sorry for the assault. I didn't mean.
It's okay.
Here we go. I got B-roll of them earlier. Main theater.
In May of 1999, Jacqueline sued Eddie for domestic violence, seeking 15% of his earnings for the previous 3 years, as she was acting as his manager but had not received any payments, which must have come as an almighty blow, as he had put his trust in her over those he had perceived to be out for his money. And after everything, it seems that she had taken advantage of his youth, his disjointed family situation, and the lifestyle he could provide.
Kind of the fact that it's like, I hate a lot of teen movies, basically, but the difference between this one, it was just sort of more intimate, and it was kind of just like about 4 just regular Joes going on the road, you know? It was cool. It was all right.
What had been recreational and functional self-medication became an outlet for escapism and numbing himself out of the reality of everything he'd been through thus far.
Dan and me, I love it. I mean, I had a blast playing him. You know, he's kind of like, he's a really smart guy. You know, he you know, but on the same token, he's like, you know, kind of young inside and messed up and trying to cling on to something. And you know, so I mean, anytime you get to play kind of like a complex character like that has a lot of like human emotions, it's great. It's fun.
This became enough of a known problem behind the scenes that when he was approached to reprise his role for Terminator 3 in the year 2000, a sobriety clause was written into his multi-million-dollar contract. This was basically a trap, with all things considered. Rather than offering him help and support ahead of filming, some kind of fail-safe, like a sober buddy or anything. So naturally this young star, now feeling larger than life, called up some friends and decided to head out and celebrate.
But of course, and I got the call actually like right when I got sober. And like, of course, like they're like, you know, they want to talk to you about the new Terminator. So I'm like, oh, it's a sign. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, and I get there and they're like, yeah, you know, we want you to play you at 14 and we're just going to kill you. And I was like, oh shit. And I'm like, and I didn't even understand like, how the hell are they going to do that? Like, I don't know. It just felt like a little bit like whatever happened to Baby Jane sort of situation.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, so I mean, I went in there and did that. So I knew what was happening. I mean, it was a mixed feeling. It was like understanding that I wasn't in a place to shoot a movie right then anyway.
Right.
You know, and also, you know, just, yeah, I mean, I was kind of happy a little bit too, because I was like, you know, fuck. I mean, I don't know if you met Nick. Nick Stahl's awesome. I think he's a great guy. But I was glad to sort of get the character just back to myself, even if it was like for a day.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of like
that's a good way to think about things, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, that was fun. I got paid. It was cool. I got to meet cool people. Call it a day.
Yeah. The big one though, I remember, when I lost Terminator 3 because oh my God, dude, like, see, I so much drugs in my life, but that was the contract. They were like, you know, we want you to not do any drugs, whatever. You just sign a clause in the contract, no drugs. And I remember literally, and it was a sweet deal. I mean, it was the best deal that I had ever gotten in my life.
For T3?
For T3, it was like a lot of money.
Like millions.
Millions. Yeah, millions. And I had never made that kind of money. And so I called my friends and I'm like, guys, I just signed this fucking awesome contract. We're going to go to the club. We're going to get a bunch of blow and we're going to fucking, you know, that's it. This is the end, man. We're going to fucking do it. And like, you know, so that's it. We made a whole thing. We went out to this club called Joseph's. I remember like I poured like some Coke on the toilet, but it kind of too much fell out of the bag. And I was like, fuck. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I was like, oh, fuck it. And I just carved this huge, like, fucking horse rail on the thing. And I just did it. And I remember just, like, walking out and I'm, like, talking to this chick. And then all of a sudden I wake up and the lights, so embarrassing. The lights in the club are on. People are, like, standing around me. My buddy's, like, crying. He's, like, you know, holding me. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, dude, you fucking OD'd. And I'm like, I didn't OD. What are you talking about? Like, when you
did OD?
I did. When I didn't know, like, I had a seizure. So time disappears. You know what I mean? When you have a Coke overdose, like time disappears. You have no idea what happened. And I'm like, this can't be happening. And of course, the ambulance came. It was like, so embarrassing. And
the news caught wind.
And of course, they're like, yeah, you know, you're not, you know, you lost the movie. We're not gonna do it with you. And
really, that was it.
That was it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. And you know, but yeah.
It didn't matter no matter what you tried.
I just signed a contract. saying that, and I went no deep. I don't know what that, if that's like some sort of like, I don't know what that was. You know, that was like the worst luck or maybe the best luck.
Well, that spun you, right? When you lost that, it got worse from there.
Yeah, kind of. But I don't know. I was already kind of on a downward trajectory in a lot of ways. So I don't know if I had that, maybe it would have been worse. I don't know.
I think, I think it's, fate. I think there's things that happen to make you stronger. And if it didn't happen then, maybe you wouldn't have found your way like you did, like you eventually found your way.
Over the next several years, both Natasha and Eddie battled with alcoholism and addiction. Both faced many similar challenges as young stars, whose worlds collided and then spiraled out of control. On April 19th, 2006, Edward married Rachel Bella. The two welcomed a son into the world in September of 2006. In July of 2009, Bella had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, but realistically, it was due to his emotional problems and the erratic lifestyle that comes with the substances he was using to soothe himself. In September of 2009, Bella had filed a restraining order after a physical altercation, but later lifted it so that Eddie could have visitations. But things got so bad that in 2012, their 6-year-old son Ethan was found to have cocaine in his system. By his mid-30s, his life had become an absolute mess. He'd had multiple physical altercations with then-girlfriend Monica Keena. He narrowly avoided a prison sentence and was given 5 years probation and was ordered to participate in substance and anger rehabilitation programs.
I guess, like, kind of, for me, by the time I did get clean, I think it was just that I wanted it so bad, like I was partying with Monica, you know what I mean? And it's just like, I hated seeing what it was doing to her. I hated seeing what it was doing to me. I couldn't recognize myself anymore. Like, my teeth were falling out. These are like veneers that they, screwed into my face. But like,
Hey, I have some veneers too. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, before that, it's like all my teeth were falling out. I was smoking meth. I was shooting heroin, and
Eddie, how many times did you try to stop, or was you forced into detox when you were arrested?
Well, I started like kind of messing with heroin in the early 2000s, and I stopped heroin for a while, but I stayed on, I kept doing coke and things like that. And I just, I was in and out of rehab basically most of my life,
Right.
And I think this last time, it just, I think everybody has their own bottom, and I think like I hit my bottom. I think I was just like, I don't want to be this anymore. It's like, and I was upset. Like, I mean, what kind of spiraled me down was like, I was going through a heavy duty custody battle and, doing that whole thing. And it was awful and all of that. So then I just, but then it just got to this point where it's like, I'm doing years in and I'm like, what am I going to do? Am I going to just keep dying like this? Or, am I going to just start trying to walk forward and try to live? It's like I didn't really...
Eddie, I've never been where you are, and I'm so thankful you're not there anymore. But my understanding is that, the more drugs you take, the higher your tolerance level is built up. So you need more drugs to get to that high or to stop the withdrawals. And my question to you is, did people around you know that you were taking so much drugs? I mean, were you able to mask it?
At a certain point, especially when heroin came into the picture, there was no masking it. And I pretty much cut myself off from the rest of the world. I was not taking work calls. I basically stopped talking to people who would care, pretty much cut myself off from the rest of the world. And it just became a very isolating thing. It was a very lonely.
I don't want anyone to think that childhood trauma is an excuse for violence, but there is a clear pattern that complex trauma can lead one to either self-destruction, lashing out, or both. which only further highlights how much more work needs to be done with how we manage mental health and trauma, because not much has changed since.
That's another thing too, man, is like when you start at such a young age, you take it for granted, like,
yeah.
I didn't, I was poor as a kid, but it was like, I started at 13 years old, and that had been my whole life, was that. So in a way, by the end, I was like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care if it just, I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having time to kind of reap what I sowed and seeing the effects of like that kind of attitude towards my life, I realized like, fuck, I was so blessed. I was so blessed.
Hindsight's 2020, my friend.
It wasn't until 2018 that Eddie was truly able to achieve and sustain a healthy lifestyle and complete mental clarity. Somehow through it all, he did manage to appear in many films over the past couple decades and is doing a lot better for himself these days.
It used to be so hard for me to watch that, just because I'm so young and it's just, I guess what you call cringy to just sort of watch it. But like now it's just like, I've been starting to be able to kind of see it in a sort of stepped away sort of, because it's so far removed. So yeah, it's a trip, man. And I get so many people that are like, dude, I was so jealous you got to like curse and ride motorcycles and, all that shit. So yeah, it's great.
Well, and if I can just name drop on your behalf, you've worked with so many incredible screen legends. You got guys like Jeff Bridges, Edward Norton, Willem Dafoe, Steve Buscemi, Christina Ricci, Kathy Bates, John Waters. I saw recently you acted opposite Shelley Duvall. I mean, it's one thing to be part of like one iconic movie, but to really have like an incredible career like you have, what are some of the highlights looking back, some of the moments that stand out most to you over the course of your career?
I don't know, man. Like, doing, like History X, man. I've heard that that's like in social studies classes and stuff now. So that kind of is awesome, I think just by the fact that, knock on wood, that I've been able to sort of endure, my career's had its ups and downs and all of that, but, I'm still able to put food on the table and make a living out of, what I do. And man, I never went to acting school or anything like that. So getting to work with talented people like Jeff Bridges and Meryl Streep and all these people, like, I really got to learn from them, and I've learned from each and every one of them, so yeah, I've been blessed, man. I've been really blessed.
He may not have had the big comeback, with major fanfare leading to a box office hit, but he seems to have found peace and stability and cultivated a much better relationship with his son, and most importantly, with himself.
Well, you always bring a part of yourself,
Now's the time. It wasn't, obviously a missed opportunity, which is like, fuck.
Yeah.
Biggest opportunity ever. I mean,
yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that bummed me out.
Dude, you've been so honest and awesome in this. It's been like so easy to talk to you. You're like, you're a great guy. I'm so fucking happy that you're sober now and you're seeing all these amazing things like the gift of your son and your relationship, and that you just love working and you have such a positive attitude after all this shit. And it's like, I want to see you like, I want to do an interview with you after you fucking get, that call from James Cameron saying, hey,
yeah,
all right, man, it's time. It's time now. Cause I think,
yeah.
People like the underdog story. I mean, you're a kid and all these things happen. And look at Robert Downey Jr. How many chances did he get before he finally figured it out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
As much as we highlight the darkness and lost souls, we do need to take notice of those who triumphed over adversity and who are a good example of putting your life back on the right path after walking so closely alongside death for so many years. The podcasts featured in this video are linked in the description, as well as links to other resources and bonus content. I'll be continuing my crusade for the common denominators of truth. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you on the flip side.